Hey, Sed.
Yes?
What exactly is it that a king does all day?
Scarcely a minute of your day is unaccounted for. Nevertheless, what you do is not as important as what you are.
What am I?
To be the King of England is a responsibility like no other on earth. You must become a symbol of all that is best about England. An embodiment of our history, our culture, our morality, our pride of achievement. In short, our ideal of civilization. You must, in the harsh light of public scrutiny, exhibit all of our virtues and none of our shortcomings.
Wait a minute. I thought all I was supposed to do was get dressed up and wave. I don't even know what our virtues are.
You will learn soon enough. I'm afraid it's a god's burden to bear. Unfortunately, it must be borne by a man.
This is the emergency podcast system. This is not a test. Movies are bombing all over the country. They are posing as movies you already know. They may already be in your theaters, your neighbor's home, or even your own. Do not panic. Specialists have been dispatched. They will help you identify these pretenders and defend you against this invasion of the remake. Please stand by for further instructions.
Welcome to the Invasion of the Remake podcast. I am your host, Jason Bishop, and still in isolation is Trish Cocklet.
We are very pleased to be here.
That's great. Are you doing the wave? I feel like you were waving at nothing.
Yes.
You were doing the princess
I'm
wave.
to my subjects.
That is amazing. Who are the subjects? Could it possibly be Sam Stepanenko?
I am here.
The royal page, Sam Stepanenko.
Yes, no pithy stuff today, but I'm here.
Okay, you couldn't figure out a pun.
Nope. My head was not there for this one, but I am here for the episode.
Okay, that's all we can. Sam is president accounted for. Check. Mm-hmm. Oh wait. There's one more name on my list. Jeff. Jeff, are you there?
Yeah.
He's present. Okay.
I am.
Jeff Omega.
Hiding behind the door frame there, peeking in.
Informing another lord, are you?
Maybe. You never know. Sometimes I go away for long periods, and sometimes I'm around for a while. When I go away, no one really knows where I go.
Oh, my.
I've been in my house for the past 6 weeks.
Yeah, we all know where everybody is right now. They're all at home.
Yeah.
Just
Who
like
got dressed today?
I got dressed today. I almost didn't.
See, I get dressed every day, but I do get away with wearing the same clothes more often because I figure I'm not doing anything. Like, they don't get dirty.
Yeah. I didn't get out of my pajama pants yesterday, but I felt like, I'm going to do this as if you guys were here in the room with me. So, nice. Or that in my mind, it's like, oh, did I accidentally turn on my camera? I want to at least look somewhat normal, but I haven't had a haircut since like February.
Yeah, it's probably the first time I shaved today in probably 4 weeks. So.
Probably March. I'm thinking March. But yeah, even my shaves are a little further apart now. Not that much further, but...
I'm still doing my legs, but for what?
You need to keep the routine. That's why I get dressed every single day.
Well, if you got those little race cars going down your leg, you don't want the bumpy road,
Yeah, I guess. But there's no race cars. There's nothing.
Oh.
I should grow them up like tumbleweeds. That's what I'll do. It's a post-April.
There we go. Never too late to grow the rainforest.
Yes. It'll help with social distancing.
Yes, it will. You're gonna be like fucking tentacles coming out of your legs.
On that note, there was a monkey in the movie we're talking about today.
There was.
Yes.
Oh my God, there was. I was so proud.
Yes, so was I. I'm like, yes.
Mitzi the psychic chimp was in King Ralph, which we're going to be talking about today. King Ralph from 1991. I couldn't believe this movie was that old.
Right?
And you know what?
It
came out in 1991. And he said, hey, man, it's the 90s.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, I knew it was a '90s movie, but I felt like it was a lot later. Like in my mind, this was near the end of. This came out at the end of his run on Roseanne when he was really kind of at the height of his career. But this was like around second season of Roseanne. I'm like, holy shit, was it that early?
Yeah, that explains how they got him for this, though. Mm-hmm. Because as much as I love and enjoy this movie, it's not really that great of a movie.
Yeah.
For me, like I do love this movie because there's a real sense of innocence about it, but it is a no risk type of movie. Like it is predictable, it is safe, but it's elevated by some fantastic character work and performances. I mean, when you've got John Goodman, Peter O'Toole, and John Hurt in the same room, goddamn, things are going to happen. And they took this mediocre script and elevated it somewhat. I mean, it's still not a great movie, but it's an enjoyable one to watch. And what I thought about when I picked this is like, okay, I enjoy this movie, but is it good? Like, do I actually laugh at it, or is it just because I like it because it's comfortable and familiar?
I was going to say, it's fun. And I mean, I'm not prone to laughing out loud in general, but I certainly did smile and I did chuckle because it's genuinely fun in the pure sense of the word. At no point does it take itself seriously.
Yeah, you could easily have your kids watch this safely. I'm not sure that was the intention of this movie, but it really feels like it's a G movie, not a PG movie.
Yes.
It does. It really does.
It feels like a
Especially
movie that you'd watch as a kid where it's like all the other movies you watch, but you can't believe that the main character said shit.
Yeah. But it's also with it, you can tell it's very G rated, especially when you get to like Miranda and Ralph's kind of quote unquote courtship. I mean, it's very G rated. So this felt like very much a family film, how a family film would portray a romance.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, the only part that got really raunchy was where the Finnish princess was talking about how she'd like him to take her on the desk in the office and all that stuff. That's about as raunchy as it got.
Yeah. And I can't help but feel, and we'll discuss this along the way, that just adding a little stink to this, right? A little raunchiness, a little more edginess to this would elevate this movie.
Yeah, given his character is a Las Vegas lounge singer, you'd expect him to be a little more lewd, a little less innocent.
Well, and he has no arc, really. Not nothing big like you would expect in a movie of this sort, like this character who learns and grows from this. Like, he ends almost in the same place where he starts at. And that's a curious thing. Like, usually we'll see like characters grow and learn from these situations, and you can make an argument he did somewhat, but it's not very obvious as to what happened. He even says outright, like, I'm stubborn in my ways, and he lives a carefree life, and he's doesn't want the responsibility, and he's quite happy not to have it when at the end of the movie. So,
well, I think that's part of what I liked about it, is there was no forced sort of redemption cycle there. And I mean, normally we do like those, but he's likable as he is.
Well, that's just it.
Yeah,
like, Goodman's really lovable.
And then this whole story has a kind of not idiot savant, but like fish out of water kind of like, he doesn't change because everything changes around him. It's more a story of one man and his outlook on the world. And despite their differences, he makes the world a better place just by being who he is kind of the takeaway thematically that I got from this kind of story.
Yeah, he does kind of warm the hearts of the people around him, and these more stiff upper lip servants of the kingdom. Now, I should set this up. The monarchy of the UK all got wiped out at the beginning of this movie through electrocution accident. Rainy day, they all went inside and it brightened up, so they're going to take this big photo of all the Wyndhams because they changed it from the Windsors for, I don't know, you can take the piss out of public figures, and legally speaking is a parody, so I don't know why they changed it from Wyndham and Windsor. And it does feel like it was a last minute change because you watch that movie and actually you can see it dubbed over in some places where they say Wyndham and it looks like it's a dub rather than Windsor. So I don't know. be it as it may, I'm going to say Windsor probably more than Wyndham. So,
Well,
but they're all
I
wiped out in an
wonder-
electrocution accident.
Sorry to bring some reality to it. I don't know. I wonder if it wasn't because they'd gone through a few rough years of like, I don't know, the Diana and Charles thing and like divorces and all that other crap. And so maybe the British public were like, let's just not take too much of the piss out right now.
That's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, because even though it is kind of making fun, it doesn't really feel mean-spirited at all.
No.
No,
But-
there's a couple of things like Princess Anna from Sweden. There looks an awful lot like Diana.
Yes.
I thought that too.
In those scenes, which makes it a little tougher to watch because Diana was still around at that time. And as much as I like King Molambon, the spear chucking scene
Yeah.
is problematic. Like,
Yeah.
even when I was younger, I'm like, I enjoy the scene, but at the same time, the innate racism of the scene
Yeah.
Yeah.
is bothersome, and I understood it then, but it's still this fun way of bonding. But it's like this African king who was playing darts with King Ralph and is now hucking spears in the same way.
Yeah.
Eek, cringe. But I liked his character. Back to the kingdom being wiped out, they're looking for an heir to take the throne, and the only thing is there's this off-handed relationship a royal had in the U.S. and this lounge singer in Vegas, which happens to be John Goodman, who really is the only American in this movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, problematic. I don't know. I think that's the one thing is I don't get about this is I don't know how much pull bastards would have to being put in as the king. I'm not very that well versed in it.
Well,
but
I
that
did
was
a
one part
little
of it.
bit of reading. This is actually something that has happened in the past. So
Okay, yeah,
there
I
is
was
a
wondering about
royal
that.
precedence set for this. And I'm trying, there's actually a term for it, and I can't remember what it's called.
Oh man. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
It's like the royal equivalent to what the president does, where they get like the 52nd cabinet member or whatever to go hide out in a hotel when they all meet in case there's an
Oh,
explosion.
Kiefer Sutherland.
Yeah. That's like based on a real thing, but just the British version. And instead of somebody who's elected, somebody who's your child in another country.
You would figure they would
Yeah,
just, they don't use the monarchy for much other than symbolism. So you figure they're like, well, they're all gone now.
You know, you could just
that
use
was a
it as
good time.
insurance.
They will not get rid of it from their cold dead hands. Plus, with that whole family photo, not to be too dark, but if it were to be true, some children should have died. Because there's some like small children that are in place of the royal line right now. So
Well, when they all got wiped
Yeah.
out, it's like, hey, clean slate, all the inbreeding's gone.
kind of, yeah.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
You know what?
We are
was
still a
thing.
colony.
There was a thing in the early 1900s and in the 1800s where people who were really rich were a lot more racist than they were afraid of sleeping with a relative.
Yeah, oh yeah. They were like pure blood is like first cousins, definitely marrying a lot.
Yeah, they're like, keeps the bloodline pure,
Yeah.
And then,
To me, it was like racism was a great way to justify incest.
yeah,
Well, and elitism too, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
And these are things we can actually bring into this because the elitism, they do it kindly in this movie where this, by royal standards, this lowbrow guy of King Ralph, this very relaxed man who's definitely not got any civility in him. How can he possibly be the King of England, especially an American? It would have been interesting to see more of the citizen reactions to that. They had a little bit of like those those stereotypical punks watching television outside of a store.
Yeah, and at the fast food place when he's trying to get a burger when he gets swarmed, they all genuinely were interested in him and seemed to like what he represented.
Yeah, by that point, he'd actually, as unorthodox as his meeting with the king of Mubazi, which is not a real place. Zambezi. That was it, Zambezi.
Yeah.
There's a Zambezi River, but there's no Zambezi country in Africa. But it was a big success, so suddenly there was this turnaround in popularity. Now, we do know from our own media how the UK media treats the royals, and so seeing all those people coalesce onto John Goodman while he's in the Burger King, that's probably what would happen, to be honest, to a royal out in public in the UK. So I do love the little Easter egg of that scene as well. Do you guys know what that is?
No.
No? John Goodman's first commercial work was a Burger King commercial.
Nice.
That's funny. Because I was thinking it was wild that someone would be in, England. Like, you'd think it would be McDonald's in every sense. Mm-hmm.
Well, Burger King, you're dealing with royalty. I get the pun as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know which if anybody even thought about that as like his first commercial was a Burger King commercial, but
That's really good.
But
yeah,
I thought that was cute. I didn't know
He's
that either.
royalty.
Like I thought it was just the pun of the Burger King myself until I did some reading. I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. I don't know if that was a happy accident or not.
it works on many levels.
All right, let us break for the trailer for King Ralph from 1991, and we'll start diving into the film. And there's not much to it, so we'll probably dive into some remake ideas as we go along as well. All right, we'll be right back after the trailer for King Ralph.
The rain appears to have stopped, Your Majesty. We should be able to continue with the portrait.
Right, we're ready now, everybody. Now, after 3. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, dear.
Now, a new king must be found.
Excuse me, Sir Cedric.
Yes?
I do believe we found an heir.
John Goodman is King Ralph.
That's the Duke of Warren, your unfortunate grandfather. You have his chin.
He's got a lot to learn.
Where do we start?
Everywhere.
A royal personage must refrain from chewing gum, using profanity, picking his nose, and staring down the bus lines of visiting female dignitaries.
What the hell? That's everything.
It's an unmitigated catastrophe. This song and dance man from the colonies.
He's smashing.
Date night.
He's dashing.
Sir Cedric, the king's gone. He just walked out.
Think, man. You've just been made King of England. Where's the first place you would go?
2 double whoppers with fries and 2 giant Cokes.
You're the new king!
He's a cut above.
All right. 1 or 2.
He's a king. In love.
You're not the kind of girl I'm used to. You can spell, you wear clothes to work.
As king, you are expected to marry a woman of noble birth, particularly given your less than perfect breeding.
Do you ever do any fencing? Just a little when I was a kid. A couple watches here and there.
I say it is time to reclaim our thrill.
Universal Pictures presents John Goodman. Peter O'Toole.
I mean, it could have been worse.
Yes, he could have exposed himself, I suppose.
King Ralph.
Doubts remain as to whether the American-born king is cut from the proper cloth.
I'm sorry. Oh, you all right? I got him good. I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry.
And that was the trailer for King Ralph from 1991, based on the novel Headlong by Emlyn Williams. Screenplay was by David S. Ward, who was also the director of this film. He wrote scripts for things like The Sting, Major League, and Sleepless in Seattle. So he's really good at these comedies and romantic comedies. And he directed Major League along with The Program and Cannery Row. Starring, of course, John Goodman as King Ralph in this movie. We've talked about John Goodman a couple of times. The first time was in episode 145.
Arachnophobia.
And then again, briefly, in 162.
One of my favorite little cameos from Chud
Yes, so really, really early work from John Goodman in a small role. But yeah, go check out that episode. It's a fun episode too. There's a rap from a guest on there that is amazing.
Yes, it really was amazing.
Peter O'Toole, one of my favorite classic actors in this movie, as Willingham, the right-hand man to the king. And we actually did talk about him, I think, briefly in episode 155.
Yeah, he had an uncredited role in Casino Royale.
I'm not even sure if we spotted it, but go listen to the episode. We talk about a Bond movie. Come on, man. And most people remember him from Lawrence of Arabia. Now, another classic British actor that a lot of people will recognize is John Hurt as Graves, who's kind of the villain of this movie. He comes from another royal line and is hoping to dethrone this king so his line can take over the royalty, and he would be the first in line, so he would become king. So he's very much wants to disgrace this king so he can take the throne. Now,
nothing self-serving about that at all.
No, not at all. He's pure motives on this movie through the whole thing. No. Most people remember John Hurt as the Elephant Man in that classic movie about John Merrick. And, of course, the first victim of an alien in Alien.
Amazing.
And a war doctor as well. Doctor Who.
I was just imagining the royal line, if it's like him and then aliens that come out. Because he did give birth to an alien.
Yeah. Didn't he go through... Yeah, Spaceballs. He also chest bursted in Spaceballs.
Yeah.
Oh, not again. Camilla Kaduri was Miranda in this movie. Most people will recognize her as the mother of Rose Tyler, Jackie Tyler from Doctor Who. Another Doctor Who connection. Which will happen a lot in an entire British cast. Richard Griffiths was Phipps, and almost everybody remember him as Uncle Dursley in the Harry Potter films. Leslie Phillips was Gordon, and another Harry Potter connection. He played the Sorting Hat in those movies.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. James Villiers was Hale, and he was in another Bond movie called For Your Eyes Only, as well as a classic British horror movie called Repulsion, which I'm going to try to get into for the next 31 Days of Horror, because that was on my list and I didn't get to it. So
Repulsion is Roman Polanski, I believe.
It is.
Yes, and Catherine Deneuve, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
That movie is actually really good. That's a very early Polanski.
Yeah. Now, Jolie Richardson plays Princess Anna, and I was actually surprised at how much we have talked about her. The first time was in episode 103.
101 Dalmatians.
And again in episode 160.
Event Horizon.
And then just last week...
Girl with the dragon tattoo.
That's it. That's probably why I picked King Ralph. I probably briefly saw it in the credits somewhere, and then it stuck in the back of my head. And like, let's do King Ralph.
I was going to ask you about that because I saw it on her credits, and I'm like, I think I know what happened.
Just stuck in the back of my brain. I'm like, oh, I really want to watch that again. Niall O'Brien was Maguire, and most people remember him from Braveheart, but we talked about him way back in episode 37.
One of my first episodes, really early in my tenure on the show here, so long ago, Rawhead Rex.
Yeah, that's the one. And lots of people, Julian Glover is a classic villain in most movies. He plays King Gustav of Sweden, a smaller role in this movie, but we talked about him in episode 123.
Missed him.
Well, he had a role in Empire Strikes Back, and most people remember him from Indiana Jones, the third one, The Last Crusade.
Yeah, The Last Crusade.
You know, that's funny. I always miss the Star Wars ones because I keep thinking, we haven't talked about them, but we've talked about all three of them.
I think he was actually a Bond villain for Your Eyes Only as well, wasn't he? Because remember, he had his ward was that skater.
I think he was, yeah. No, he was in a Bond film. I
don't know if that was the right one, but...
That or You Only Live Twice, maybe? I can't remember.
Yeah, they blend together. I used to know that stuff off the top of my head, not as much anymore.
There's a lot in our brains right now.
There's a lot.
Expected.
Yeah. Judy Porfitt was Queen Catherine, the wife of Julian Glover's King Gustav. She was more recently in Dolores Claiborne. I guess that wasn't that recently anymore, but that's where most people remember her from. Yeah. Rudolph Walker was King Mulamban. British audience will remember him from a nice long run on the EastEnders. Roger Aston Griffiths, I just wanted to bring up, he was barely in this movie. He's the photographer that kills the royal family. family, but he's a very famous British actor as well. He was in Game of Thrones for quite a while, and he's one of those faces you would definitely recognize in his older years. He's hard to recognize in this movie, but he's been around a long time, and it's interesting such a prominent British actor had such a minor role in this movie. I think he was probably just making a brief cameo in the movie, to be honest.
Yeah.
He owed somebody something.
It is possible. Lost a bet.
Yes.
Okay, so let's dive into King Ralph here a little bit. As we said, Lounsinger, heir to the throne, and hijinks ensue as he settles into the monarchy, and we get fun. It's a lot of fun, cutesy stuff. Like he's trying to learn how to just handle silverware in a royal way and drink tea without the teacup getting stuck on his finger and the two lumps. Like, they're cute little jokes, and putting a bowling alley in his bedroom.
Yes.
And wearing the crown and having it fall off in a hot tub. That was the one thing I'd want to do that.
Oh, yeah. That's his pretty woman moment.
You're right.
That's essentially what it is.
Oh, you ruined it. You ruined it.
Or
if only he was shaving his legs at the time.
There you go. Or singing Prince.
I'm going to throw this out here right now before I forget. This has kind of been remade as The Princess Diaries, which is a different book entirely, but it's a very similar story.
Yeah.
Very similar. I mean, they even sort of used the same thing of bringing a really prominent A-list English actress with Julie Andrews in The Princess Diaries. Right, so there's definitely a parallel there, but the stories in the end end up being quite different. But there's still there's some similarities.
It's kind of like maybe, like, I wonder if it's an example of parallel thinking or if one was inspired by the other. Because there's stuff like Weeds and Breaking Bad both have inherently similar premises, but in practice are very different.
Yeah, and I mean, they're very distant. I mean, Princess Diaries was the 2000s, right? So there's at least a decade between them. So I think there's a certain amount of inspiration.
Well, I mean, you think about, like, I don't know when Princess Diaries was written. Did it predate Headlong? I don't know, but, Headlong's not a famous novel, but Princess Diary is. It's like, would the Hunger Games exist if Battle Royale hadn't been written in Japan and been done first? And
that's always the question.
And
right?
Hunger Game being the more readily popular version of.
But to be fair, there's also, you have stories like The Prince and the Pauper, which predates everything, where it's trying to pass off somebody like as royalty. There's a little bit of that in there. Like it's just
an old story reinvented over and over and over again. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
For the 90s with John Goodman.
Now, John Goodman, like, he doesn't like being called the star of this movie because he's always considered himself a character actor and not a leading man. He hates that term.
And explain why he's the lead in Flintstones, actually.
Well, I mean, you would have thought it around the time, who else? If anybody would have fantasy casted a Flintstones live action movie, 9 out of 10 people would have said John Goodman. Right?
But if you look at his body of work when he does sort of take the prominent role in a film, it's always like an ensemble type cast. Like this movie, it is really an ensemble. You have actors like John Hurt and Peter O'Toole, like you've mentioned. So he's just the central figure of the movie. I can see why he doesn't think of himself as the leading man.
Yeah, he's in Cloverfield Lane, and he'll play prominent roles, but I don't think he's ever saw himself as a leading man or is even comfortable being a leading man. But I thought he was very good at leading this movie. This is actually his first leading role as well.
Oh, wow. He does have a lot of charisma that I feel like I always forget about with John Goodman.
I never forget about his charisma. I love him every time I see him. Even if the movie sucks, he's always a joy to watch.
Yeah, he always chews up the scenery when anything he's in.
Yeah, I like having him in like lots of movies. Like, I mean, when he brings that intensity and that darker element, I absolutely love it.
Red State.
Yeah.
Even though he wasn't a dark character in that movie, but Red State, he was very good in. And 10 Cloverfield Lane, where he does turn on some of the darkness in him. And, he can be cute and cuddly and then fucking scary at the same time.
And to be fair, in Arachnophobia, there's a dark element to his character, but it's played for comedy.
And that's something we should talk about here is Arachnophobia was around the same time, a year later, I think. there's that cute, cuddly quality that I think he kind of fell into those roles for a little bit and was kind of typecast as this lovable fat guy, which I'm glad he's kind of shook off, but it is still a quality I kind of want to keep in our version of King Ralph, like a lovable but more fallible type of character.
I kind of want him to be somewhat cleverer. Like he's a Vegas lounge act, and he's like been scraping and scrimping his whole life. Like I want him to like be looking at the angles of playing this whole thing, but his inherent goodness makes him do it for good in the end.
Well, yeah, we want to see a character growth, but there was one line in the movie when King Gustav asked him if he fences. He's like, well, once or twice when I was a kid, a couple of watches,
right?
But I'm like,
that was a joke I laughed out loud at. Actually.
Yeah, because and when you think about it, like, you have the crown jewels.
Yeah.
You have all this around you, and maybe initially you're thinking this could end at any moment, and you're pocketing some of that. Or maybe he's got a younger brother who's definitely unsavory and is looking for handouts any way we can get it. And he's constantly diffusing these type of situations. And that would be a good motive for Graves to be able to, if he could disgrace that entire family in one swoop.
And,
what did happen with the
thing of like horse racing over there too, which would be an awesome way, like gambling. I think I could see his character doing.
Yeah.
What did happen with the? Because they did mention at one point that it was between him and another person who was British, but I don't remember what came up of that character or that mention.
He became the king. That was Peter O'Toole.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was Peter. That's right.
Yeah,
that's
there
right.
was another person in the line who didn't feel they were worthy to take the role, and that was Willingham.
You know what,
Cedric.
I somehow didn't connect those dots. I must have been tired.
What? So that scene where he's wearing the crown at the end?
Oh no, that makes sense. He does speak with a British accent.
It's like, well, Ralph quit. I get to wear his stuff.
Yeah.
Well, the scene where Ralph confronts him is actually surprisingly brief, right?
Yeah.
So if you would have looked away or even stopped to take a drink, you might have missed it. Because Ralph does confront him and does say, "No, you didn't think you weren't worthy. You were afraid."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I almost wonder if that almost wouldn't be worth playing up if you were to have like not an enemy character, but a more adversarial type character is somebody who maybe is more conflicted with being his servant because he also can be king.
I don't think you want to take away that inherent nobility of that character.
Yeah, there's that nobility and goodness of that character, and it does kind of pull away from John Hurt, who wants his line to take over the Graves character.
Yeah,
like you need that juxtaposition.
Yeah, and I like to have that inner spy thing. Like that's the kind of stuff that does kind of work in this movie.
Oh, definitely.
But what I want to do is like you have Willingham, who's inherently a good person and would make a great king. And then you have Graves, who wants it and covets it. And it's like, I would like to play up more why John Hurt would be bad, why it would be bad for him to be king. Like,
yeah, I want more scenes between those two characters.
Bad.
Yeah, you need to have more of that, and it puts more pressure on trying to make Ralph a proper king and to overcome some of his more questionable morals. It's not that he doesn't know right and wrong, but sometimes might make the wrong decision, and trying to create this moral responsibility that is important for that station.
Mm-hmm. I don't know nearly enough about the situation, as a lot of people definitely do, who have to live with it every day. But I almost feel like you couldn't make this movie with those kinds of things without talking about something like Brexit. What do you guys think?
Oh, for sure. You need Brexit in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how do you make a social commentary? I mean, we're not British. We're safe over here in the colonies with our own problems.
Because especially with Graves' character having a line that he wants to take over, with everything being as volatile as it is, like something like that has bigger ramifications now than maybe it would have in the 90s.
Yeah, imagine having the entire British family wiped out during this volatile time in the kingdom.
But I have this would also kind of raise the stakes in that him being an American, because the whole thing with like Brexit, there's a lot of this xenophobic crap where like foreigners are coming in and taking our jobs. Literally, a foreigner has come in and taken a job.
Yeah, and you could just make it almost like a throwaway line that still addresses it, because Brexit will, at the time of our remake, is kind of almost a done deal, is just have that Graves character say, it's Brexit all over again.
It's like Britain for Brits. Like, have him be like that BP.
You would think there'd
racist person.
You'd think there would be protests of a non-British person being the top royal.
Yeah.
And you could play that
that's
up
why
a
I say,
little
like,
bit.
this is a very family-friendly film. There's low stakes on this. But in a Brexit world, having a foreigner come in and be head of the monarchy, you would have a lot of people.
Yeah, we've already got an entertaining, safe version of King Ralph, and I think to remake this, you can't play it safe. You've got to register these things that are actually happening in the world, and you can make it a little raunchier. Raunchier comedies seem to do better anyway. You don't really see a lot of PG comedies right now. You don't see a lot of comedy at all right now.
For Comic Point, what I do is I want to keep some punks in there, but I want them to be the people who's like, I have no problem with somebody coming in from another country and they're like fighting against the BP guys.
Nice.
BNP guys, British National Party, and like the punks are like, you guys are assholes. I want to keep that.
I totally agree.
I would definitely also have like much more of like a prime minister role.
Yeah.
Specifically in the aspect of a prime minister who is used to working with the monarchy, but relatively in a situation where, you know, he pretty much does what he wants, versus now a new king coming in and him having to now work with this person to make like British policies and stuff, because that is kind of what would happen, and that's a very interesting dynamic.
What if Graves was the prime minister?
Yeah, that would make more sense.
I mean, when you think of like a Boris Johnson type of character
yeah,
in that role, and it's like, oh, I could be the top political figure and a royal at the same time? Ooh.
Yeah,
Totally.
I mean, you could play that up. I don't think it could actually happen in real life.
Yeah, I don't think
probably
he
couldn't.
could be prime minister. But what I would like to have is actually, they had some snap elections over there. So I want him to have a meeting with one prime minister, and then later on the film have a meeting of like, what happened to the other guy?
Weren't you mayor last week?
Yeah, exactly. What happened?
Yeah, because the Queen has to confirm the prime minister before they can become prime minister. So you could actually play that up a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean I have to confirm a new prime minister? What happened to the old one?
I
did that
just
last
learned that
week.
guy's name.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that guy.
That's
It's like,
awesome.
shit, no, I didn't learn his name.
Well, no reason now.
Yeah.
Send him a fruit basket.
And you can replay up the American inherent misunderstanding of British politics, like, because
Yes.
I mean, we barely understand our own politics, let alone another country's. So you can really play that up.
you can really also play up the whole, like, if this whole thing is going to be, you know, like, let's call it what it is. It's got to be satirical by its very nature. But you could have the you know, King Ralph almost naively come from a position of like American saviorism, like how America always wants to change every country to be America. Like, you know, Americans way is the best way. It's the land of opportunity, and, you know, democracy is where it's at. But there's all, you know, again, we don't understand how other countries work.
Yeah.
You can have it too, where he literally cannot comprehend a non-two-party system, and they're like, no, it's pretty good because there's a lot of other stuff. Like, yeah, you could get into some of the politics.
Ralph
of it, but
couldn't
I
understand
like it.
dessert.
Yeah.
Spotted Dick, which was again about as naughty as it got. But we kind of got a little bit of that sort of Americanization in the scene where he's playing cricket. And where he just cranks that ball right through the window. And you can play that up a little bit where he's like, okay, well, cricket, let's try baseball now.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, why does Britain not have its own professional baseball league?
Well, what's weird is they have a game called Rounders, which is similar to baseball, but not really baseball.
That's the problem. It's not baseball.
Yeah.
They have all these things that kind of look like baseball, but aren't.
Yeah, and you could really play up the confusion between football and football.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Oh,
I'm surprised they didn't go with that.
That's such an obvious joke that they didn't do.
Yeah, he wears a Green Bay Packers jersey.
Yeah, no, that's like a give me. Like,
And
yeah.
do you know what? You can reasonably do a joke where the king says soccer, and there's like, it's blasted all over the papers the next day, and people are outraged.
Yeah,
because I met a Scottish guy who was like, he's like going, oh no, soccer. He's like, it's not soccer, it's football.
Yeah, and I mean, they should have had that joke in there because he's watching football while he's playing piano the first time you meet him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? Like they set that joke up and then never used it.
Huh. I wonder if they did have it in there and they just didn't use it.
Yeah, it's possible. We don't know whatever hit the cutting room floor, and I doubt we're going to ever get a director's cut.
No.
Given it was the screenplay and the director, I think we pretty much got everything we were going to get in this movie. I don't think that's sitting on the floor somewhere. It's just an obvious one that got missed.
You know what I was thinking too, like, and this goes back to the beginning of Wiping Out the Royal Family. There's a movie with Alec Guinness called Kind Hearts and Coronets. And there's like it's an inheritance type of thing, but this whole family gets like wiped out by like more and more absurd accidents. So I don't know if I want one big accident for the royal family. I would love to see a series of super stupid and absurd accidents.
Well, they could be the prequel movie that's like the Final Destination.
No, but
version.
it's like a montage of all these people getting slowly taken
That
out.
would be a conspiracy.
That could be funny, and then you could play into the conspiracy a bit.
Yeah, it could be hilarious. And they would blame Brexit.
Oh man, what a dark turn, and Graves has been plotting all these convenient accidents.
Yes.
Oh,
well, that's
man.
what Kind Hearts and Coronets basically is.
That is so dark. No, I don't. I want to keep it light and breezy, but
I do.
But it could be a black
what?
comedy just as easily.
Yeah.
Well, I think we were leaning towards that anyway.
And I mean, there's nothing saying that you can't start dark and then move into the light, right? I mean, lots of comedies do that.
We want hope at the end. We want it to be happy because, like, that's the point at the end of the movie is they have somebody who's truly worthy to be king, and he knows the whole thing, and everybody's kind of happy.
Yeah, well, when he flubs up the meeting with the Swedes and loses a ton of jobs for the British people as a result, he does come up with an alternative because the African king had said they were going to make Africa's first car and all the engines were going to be produced. He made that deal. All the engines were going to be produced in England, so he created new jobs from that particular relationship. So he does prove himself at the end, even though he does step down as king and abdicates to Willingham, to Cedric. He still has to be told by Cedric that he was a good and kind king and that he was worthy of that throne.
Yeah.
And he never did quite see that. Oh, I love that ending.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't know if it was a good ending or not, or if it's just because it's good because Peter O'Toole delivered the lines.
Yeah. Well,
no, you know, like you do talk about it, and it does really feel deserved, like that he does become king at the end because of how Peter O'Toole plays the character.
Yeah. He's massive amounts of patience. I'm surprised he hasn't yelled at when Ralph is sneaking out to meet the one-time stripper of Miranda. Yeah. It's like she goes one time, but that one time's all the press needs.
Yeah.
That whole thing with Graves using Miranda to try to maneuver Ralph into position and pay her. So to get Ralph into a compromising position, it doesn't even just get kissed in public. So if the king has a relationship with this stripper, it's going to cause big scandal and force him to abdicate that way. He gets what he wants, but she actually didn't take the money. She didn't know they had gotten the photo already. Yeah. Which causes a little bit of angst between her and Ralph when she reveals that. But I feel like they had these little gems, then they're not willing to go far enough with them. It does feel like a classic romantic comedy angle, but it just, I don't know, he doesn't get mad enough. Everybody sleeps on it and they're fine.
The relationship has no stakes whatsoever, despite him being the King of England.
Yeah. Well, it's. I'm sorry. Even in the 90s, kissing another woman, not so much. I mean, they had what was it? Charles wanted to be like Camilla's tampon. They had a lot more going on that was a little more racy. And it was just
sorry, the image popped into my head. I tried to fight it and it wouldn't go. It just.
Well, you know what? If you want to see an image, there was a caricature artist who did depict the image in a magazine. It was upset a lot of people.
It's funny.
It is.
Actually, speaking of, that's an aspect I would love to see, even if it's a small thing, is I would love to see any sort of caricature of this American king. Because caricature is pretty big over in the UK in terms of depiction of royalty and popular figures and stuff. And I would just love to even if it's a throwaway scene, newspaper or something.
Oh, we could have Ralph being the kind of guy who would like clip it and put it on his wall.
Totally.
Like, oh, I'm a cartoon. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like he'd be, like maybe he becomes friends with the person or something. Like the person does a nasty caricature of him, and then he loves it and invites him over to
ask for an autograph. He wants a signed copy of it.
Oh yeah, no, they calls him in and he comes in and make it look like he's really angry, and it's like
he wants to buy the original art.
Yeah, can I have the original art? This was awesome.
I love that. I love that. Good call, Jeff.
Real good.
I like
it. You could have it. This guy works at a newspaper. You could have like this meeting sort of be an impetus where they're figuring out something shady is happening underneath the king's nose with these other people, like with this newspaper guy. Like he takes a liking to King Ralph, so he investigates.
And if he had a friend who is a caricature artist in a newspaper, like that actually story wise is not a terrible role.
Are we suddenly bringing in Mikhail Blomkvist from last week?
Maybe.
Only he can draw. He doesn't write. He just draws.
He just draws. But that could be kind of his gateway into figuring out the underhandedness of the politics and the other royals and the other politicians that are wishing him harm as well. Because to get that outsider perspective, slightly inside, right? Like privy to all the nonsense that maybe the mass public kind of glosses over.
And he could be privy to of like the photographer. Like he might know the guy who was like hired to get compromising photos because he might work for a rag when he's doing the cartoons, right?
Yeah, that sets up the ending really nicely too, because then you have corroborating evidence and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in a comedy, you don't necessarily need that, but it's nice to tighten that up a little bit and give it a little more.
Even in a comedy, plot holes. No, we should have it. We should have that.
Can we talk about this for a second? Because Graves, during that address to Parliament, is outed for trying to keep a monarch from ascending to the throne in the first place.
Yes.
That is a crime. And until 1996, maybe it was 98, I'm not sure, it was punishable by death. Now it's life in prison. So...
the really dark.
This movie has a dark edge because this is 1991. The audience may not realize this, but Graves was probably killed.
Like there's a scene at the end of the movie that's cut where he dies via guillotine or something.
Oh no, it's hanging in the UK.
Oh yeah,
The guillotine was still going when Star Wars was in theaters.
Yeah, that was in France.
God damn.
Yeah.
To think 1991, this guy for trying to conspire to take the throne was probably hung.
I wonder how that played in England for people who knew that.
They don't call him John Hurt for nothing.
Oh,
First
that was low hanging fruit, man.
And it still deserves a well done, Jeff. It's huge tonight, Jeff.
Is that our first pun of the evening? I don't know.
He's had the winners. I don't know, man. He's shooting for the throne.
He is. We better watch out.
Hey, so do you want to get into some fantasy casting?
I think so. We can throw some... we've been kind of just spitballing raw ideas rather than a concrete structure, but I think the skeleton of the movie is fine. It just needs to be a little more raw and raunchier. We need to have an arc for King Ralph where he actually learns to become a better person because of what he's doing and the people around him, and just the bad examples as well as keeping bad things from happening because of other people in his life that might be greedy as well. I don't know if we'll have a greedy relative or him trying to fetch gems or whatever, but those little moments that could be funny that we can have turn around when he's like, no, this isn't right. And to have him grow as more of a proper person and realize that maligning a regular citizen like Miranda as well and keeping him from having relationships also isn't right. And at least that's also in the movie. So
actually, you reminded me of something I wanted to mention earlier is there's a line in the movie where he says, I haven't gotten paid yet. So you could really play off that in terms of him sort of secreting away valuables in case he never does get paid. So it's not really that he's bad or a thief so much as he's just hedging his bets.
I mean, it is his. He is the king. It's just it might not be his, and he might need to take it.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, would like to think about going from being a lounge singer or whatever profession we have him be into the monarchy, like this would seem like some weird fever dream to him and could end at any second. And I could see where he might want to squirrel away a little nest egg while he's here, because like he's constantly waiting for that other shoe to drop.
Well, what I wonder too is like maybe, I don't know if it has to be happening after his coronation, is when I think somebody should mention him when it comes to money. It's like going, no, like after a while you're going to be on the money. That's who you are.
That's good.
You don't need money. You're on the money. You can pay with your face.
That's not a metaphor. You're not on the money. You're on the money.
Yeah, that's a
you know,
good,
Swingers, where they said you're so money, you are literally money.
Oh, I love that joke, Trish. I love that. Oh, that is so good.
You know what? I feel like because of our current climate and because of where we are in this era of history, things like Richie Rich don't really play well today. But you could do a lot of Richie Rich-esque things in a King Ralph situation, because I feel like the monarchy is one of the few like bastions left in the world of unimaginable wealth. But it's not something that people necessarily like. It's not as evil as it is in anybody else's hands somehow, you know?
I did find it interesting watching the movie that the wealth isn't his. Like, the wealth was there when he got there, and it's all this history that's been left here, and it's no one person's.
Yeah.
Like, you get it, and then you leave it for the next guy.
Yeah, and the way he was kind of overwhelmed by it all, especially at the beginning there, was kind of nice and telling, because he was sort of like stunned by how opulent everything was and how big everything was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his bedroom's probably bigger than my entire house.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, it makes me wonder, too, is if it's somebody, if there was ever any kind of conflict where it's, I spent my time, like, working hard and doing this. Like, I learned piano and doing all this stuff. It's like, but people are kind of born into this. And you could have sort of a moment where it's like, yeah, people can be born into it, but it doesn't mean they're well suited to it. You have to learn. You have to try. You have to adapt. Like, it's sort of, there could be something about, like, because I mean, that being born into it, I would have some conflict about it.
Yeah, like a good spot for Willingham, actually. That's a really good, like, overall thematic, like, arc for the movie.
And I think that's where Willingham was sort of, he could be a little more prominent in that aspect of it, because that sounds like a line that Willingham would deliver to try and Ralph, like, you've learned how to play piano and you have talent, but this is something that, like, you're technically born into it, but you haven't learned how to be a royal.
Yeah.
And America still has that whole thing where it's like, no matter your station, blah, 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 you can rise to the highest in the land, which isn't actually true unless you're born wealthy. But you could have this whole thing where he truly believes that. He's like, you can be anything, but in here, you're just born, and that's what happens. Like, there's got to be that conflict.
It's almost like he needs to be the person who, he's like, you know, the only person who still believes in the American dream. And his dark night of the soul in the movie is when he kind of learns that the American dream is not a thing, but then that's that's what he needs to overcome to have beat person by the end of the movie.
Well, then you can have little shades of the powers corrupt in there too, like having all these limited resources and suddenly having them all and just paying people off to do this and do that, and give me a bowling alley, you get to do this. And Cedric's there, he's the one with the most humility, and to ground him a little bit, saying, hey, there is a responsibility for this station. It's not just buying what you need and buying people off and that sort of thing. So Cedric's a very central character in here, and the one guy who doesn't feel like he's worthy is probably the most worthiest of them all, because he's been around royals for most of his life, knows how opulent and dickish they could probably be at times, and at the same time knows how to rein them in and give them humility.
And he could also he also knows the whole Mean Girls things. Like, there could be other kind of royals or earls or dukes. Or
that's Kid Gustav.
Can you do me a favor, dude? Can you just, give me this contract? And, King Ralph thinks they're friends.
Yeah.
But Cedric's like, no, this guy's been talking shit behind your back. You are not friends. He thinks you're some lowly, stupid idiot that he can just take advantage of.
Yeah. Okay,
It's kind of like the American Psycho, like just meaningless inter-business petty conflict.
Let's get into some casting now. I think that irons things out a little bit better, actually.
Yeah.
Hey, Sam, why don't you start us off here?
Okay, I will start us off. So I thought actually quite hard about my Ralph, and then yesterday morning I was showering and
he was so
I
hard.
found my Ralph.
Yeah, it took. I still have a long list of Ralphs. Go ahead.
Yeah, I narrowed it down to one. I want Josh Gad.
Not bad. Not bad.
I think he'd be perfect because if we keep him as a lounge singer, he can sing. He can play sort of the everyman, but also if we wanted him to be a little less innocent, he could do that too. For my Willingham, I went with Jeremy Irons. I think he'd be great Willingham.
Oh, that's good.
That is good.
Yeah. For my Graves, I went with Hugh Laurie.
Nice.
For my Miranda, I went with Katie McGrath. She was in Jurassic World, and she plays Lena Luthor in the Supergirl TV series.
Yeah, I know
right
exactly who she is, yeah.
For my Phipps, I went with Toby Jones.
Nice.
Very good. I like that.
Yeah.
I wish I would have thought of Toby, actually.
For my Hale, I went with Ian Holm.
Ah, I forgot my Hale.
And then I didn't cast many more people after that, but I did cast Princess Anna because I want Anna Kendrick to play Princess Anna. I'd love to see her playing with that, like especially with that surprise deep voice that she has when she first talks, which was hilarious. And I could just see Anna Kendrick just loving doing that.
That was the thing about King Ralph that I thought overall, like as a movie, is generally I was bemused throughout, but there was a lot of surprise moments like that took me by surprise. It was funnier than I expected.
Yeah, that would have been probably my biggest laugh out loud moment was that. It's like I actually did chuckle there because I'd forgotten about it and it did surprise me and it did make me laugh.
Yeah, considering how many times I've seen the movie, it's been a long time since my last watch. And then the first baritone comes out of her voice, like, "Oh right."
Is that okay? Sorry, just to derail this for a second. Was that like a whole thing where they done something with her voice overall?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds manufactured.
There probably was some manufacturing to that. I'm sure.
Yeah, because I'm like, if she could actually hit that low point, oh man.
Well, there were times where I thought she was.
Yeah. Especially after the first initial shock of it, it wasn't quite as deep, and I think that they did sort of manipulate it a little bit for that first little bit, and then she was doing it herself later on. At least that's the way it felt to me. But that first moment of it was really funny to me. And then all I have left is my director, and I went with Nicholas Stoller because he handles comedy really well.
Nice.
Like
Neighbors, Neighbors 2.
Anything without Neighbors?
No, there is. Yeah, there was. I've forgotten the other two movies he did before it.
Okay.
But yeah, he does do sort of character-driven comedy fairly well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, like ensemble kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I might have something that might go with that. So.
And that was it. I didn't cast the African King, but I'll just throw Idris Elba in there because who doesn't want Idris Elba in any role?
Cool.
Exactly.
I thought about him too.
I did.
It was lazy that one, but that's okay.
I was like, who else could it be? Idris Elba?
I'll tell you. I'll tell you who else it could be.
Oh, I know who else.
Okay, Jeff, why don't you go next? Because at least it looks like Trish and I at least cast that one.
I was really excited over. I was really trying to think about what would be really good because we've been watching a lot of comedy lately, and I'm very quickly learning actually that the 2010s were very good for comedy, but there was just a lot of really good comedies that came out that everybody reviewed terribly and then just kind of disappeared and no one talked about them. But anyway, so I was thinking for a main actor, like what Sam was saying, I wanted someone who could also sing. So I was kind of hoping that Ralph would be John C. Reilly.
Oh.
Because I am a big fan of John C. Reilly. I'll just watch him in anything. He's an excellent dramatic actor, and he's also one of my favorite comedic actors, and he can sing incredibly. And I also think that he has the right kind of sensibility that John Goodman kind of had as King Ralph, in that kind of nice guy, kind of naive, like he can kind of play up that childlike attitude fairly well. And I was hoping for Peter O'Toole's character, for Willingham, I was thinking of maybe Stephen Fry, because I was trying to think of someone who was like very properly British. It was like maybe between him and Steve Coogan, but I think I would love to have Graves played by Steve Coogan because he's hilarious and, can play scheming very well. That brings me to my directing. Actually, before I get to that, my Miranda, I wanted to be played by Carey Mulligan because she's also British, and nice. I think that she'd fit that role well. But I think for a director, I think that Chris Morris would be a really cool choice. He's a director who I really like. He has a big background in TV. He's directed for a bunch of very good sketch comedy shows, worked with a lot of good British talent. But he's kind of most known for recently. He did a bunch of episodes of Veep that he might have won an Emmy for. He also just did a movie last year, which I didn't know about and haven't seen, but apparently it's good. But yeah, he did a fake British news show back in the day called Brass Eye. A lot of the stuff that he does is like a little bit satirical, a little bit... he's actually the guy who played the first boss in IT Crowd, who jumped out the window.
Oh, yay!
Yeah. So he's a really good writer and director, and he has a very sharp point of view for satire, kind of in a very specific way that I think would be really well suited to King Ralph, if you wanted to tackle it from a British direction.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you wanted to go from an American direction, I would go with Adam McKay, just because he's very deft at both comedy and, with movies like The Big Short, like he is a good understanding of things, and obviously has an interesting point of view that would also work well.
Cool. Good cast. And so yours was great there, Sam, as well. Trish.
Hey.
What do you got for us?
Well, I did something different because I was watching this movie and I thought I kind of went in sort of a different direction. I did a gender swap because I'm like, there's a whole other aspect to this if you become queen and you're just expected to breed at some point. And that's very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You get a job and it involves getting knocked up.
Yeah.
And you didn't plan it.
That sucks, actually.
It really sucks. So I have, I put, she's a lounge singer, but her mom named her Cher, because I'm like, King Cher just sounds really...
Will be Queen Cher.
Sounds really good to me.
Queen
Cher sounds really awesome to me. And I went with Abby Elliott, and she's done a lot of comedy shows, like Indebted, and she was on SNL, and I could see her being like just a down on her luck, like lounge singer, and I think that would be kind of an interesting take on it. And then instead of a Miranda, I made a Malcolm, and it's Damian Maloney.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been in a few shows. He's on Brassic and he's on Game Face.
Mm-hmm.
Both on CBC Gem, by the way. Very good shows. For my William, I went with Tobias Menzies, who is in The Crown as Prince Philip. And I thought he would be good. And then for Phipps, I went with Derek Jacobi.
Oh.
Because I like him. I went a little younger with Willingham because I was like, I wonder what would happen if you just made him a little bit younger. And that's sort of, I could have swapped the two, but I just kind of went with this way.
Derek Jacobi, after him playing a short stint as the Master on Doctor Who, he becomes the very scary Phipps.
True. But I don't know. I've seen him in more heartwarming roles lately, so that's where I'm
That's
going
cool.
from.
I love him, so he's great.
And then I have the Prince of Finland. I cast that, Alexander Ludwig. But then I added another level where the Prince of Finland is gay, and he's like, oh no, we just have to marry. I mean, I'll give you a couple of kids, but we'll do our own thing, which would be a whole other way to do it. And definitely has happened at royal families at some points in time.
Mm-hmm.
Guarantee that.
Not long ago, Camille Nanjiani was on Conan Needs a Friend, just talking about other cultures. Marriage really is just two people with stables.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
that's it.
Yeah.
It's just a contract. You're just doing it. There's no love involved. It's just, oh, this person will just put this person with this person, and that's just...
Well, that's what they tried to do, is tried to marry off King Ralph with Princess Anna so they could get that contract.
Exactly, right?
Which I'm like, really?
Yeah, it's so tragic.
It's like not even necessarily wrong, just very foreign and definitely different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like, she sounded sad about it, too. She's like, if I married for love, I would have married this other guy. And he's like, you can kind of see him be like, oh, like, he feels a little bit bad for her, too, which I kind of enjoyed.
But she's all for raunchy sex in the...
Absolutely. She knows how to get through if she has to. She's like, your buttocks are good. I can deal with that. And then for King of Zambezi, Daniel Kaluuya from Get Out.
Oh, nice.
I put him as that. And then for Graves, I went with Jason Isaacs. He has played so many people scheming against a king for like decades, and he knows how to do that.
That's
role.
because he's got evil eyebrows.
He really does. And he can be funny if he needs to be. Like he's got.
That's why I'd be suspicious of your Phipps, because he's got evil eyebrows.
He does. He can be kind too. You have to watch the right movies.
Yeah, that's the lesson of the movie. Don't judge a man by his eyebrows.
Don't judge a man by his evil eyebrows.
No, don't just. Yeah, that's part of it. It's not about station and how you look. It's all there.
It's all about the evil eyebrows.
And then
it's a good thing I trimmed mine.
Director. Oh, sorry.
Sam said it was a good thing he trims his.
Nice.
Me too, because mine will get the point.
Yeah. Oh, and for my director, I don't know. I came down to two people. It was either Anisha Ganatra, who did Late Night with Mindy Kaling and Emma Thompson, or Richard Ayoade, I think would, because you're talking, I wrote that down as soon as you mentioned IT Crowd, because I'm like, oh man, because IT Crowd does do satire, especially the episode about stress. They know how to do that stuff.
Richard Ayoade is a very good director. I thought about him as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like his movies are like a lot more Wes Anderson-y, so it would be it'd be a really interesting fit.
Yeah, totally. All right, let's get on to mine here. I'm going to save my King Ralph for last because I really struggled on my Ralph, much like Sam did. It just took a while, and I kept trying to avoid my choice, and then in the end, I think I settled on it. But
in total honesty, the gender swap kind of came to my head sort of when I was struggling with the Ralph thing. And I'm like, oh, this solves all my problems.
Right. It's a good thing I wasn't thinking about Princess Diaries, but I might have done the gender swap, and then if that had come to mind, I would have gone back because like, oh, they've already done it.
Well, and the thing, too, with John Goodman and King Ralph, I mean, we were talking about it being relatively early in his career, but I don't know anybody today who has that kind of all-American quality, that like everyman quality that John Goodman had at that point.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got a few, but we'll get there. Okay, I'm going to start off with my director, because I often forget to do it at the end, so I'll do it at the beginning. And this will have some justification. I went with David Schwimmer.
Okay.
Specifically because of Run, Fat Boy, Run, when he directed a very British movie with Simon Pegg and Thandie Newton and Dylan Moran. These very British actors.
You don't have to justify it. That was genius.
Yeah.
That's a good choice.
It was one of the last things I came up with, but I'm like, oh, I want this. I really want this. Because that was such a good, underrated movie. And I'll have to see what he's been up to since then, because that was a while ago. But I think he's a very good director. And it's nice to see him moving from his Friends fame into doing directing. And he's had some hits and he's had some misses because of it. And I think this is one of those just under the radar. It probably did fairly well in England, but it's probably fairly unknown in North America, despite it being a North American director directing it. So
it's quite good.
It is very good. I highly recommend it as another fun romantic comedy for people. And coming from me.
Yeah,
that was definitely a casualty of the post. I saw Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, and now I got to watch everything that Simon Pegg is in.
That's kind of how I discovered it. I was in that mode where it's like, what else are you doing? I need more of that in my life. For the Miranda character, I went with Natalie Dormer.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm. Game of Thrones and all sorts of cool stuff.
She was on my list too, but I'm like, I think I've used her recently, so I won't.
I don't think I've used her in a very long time, so this is a good time to pull out some of my British favorites that I don't use very often. For my Willingham, I think I had that figured out before I ever watched a frame of footage for this particular episode. Had to be that proper British, and I was thinking about delivery like Peter O'Toole, and I'm like, who could pull this off? And then I thought of Hugh Grant.
Nice.
It fits. It works.
I thought about him too.
Because he's now of an older age. He's no young romantic comedy lead anymore. And it'd be like, hey, he's got the roots in this, and now we can pull him up in his station a bit. And before some disgraces in his life, I don't think anybody would have not thought of him as King of England at some point.
You could also have a throwaway Love Actually joke. He's like, well, I was going to run for Prime Minister at one point.
Yeah, that's a great choice.
I almost married a supermodel. For my Graves, just because I like it when he plays a bad guy, Pierce Brosnan.
Nice.
For Gordon, the spy servant that is actually working for Graves, I went with Martin Freeman.
Oh, nice.
Very good.
For Phipps, just because he's been on my brain lately, Matt Berry, or alternatively Nick Frost. But
if it's Matt Berry, we need to give him tons more lines.
Yeah, but I'm thinking Matt Berry.
I mean, because Nick Frost is great at dialogue.
Yeah,
But I just love Matt Berry's voice.
Yeah, was another one of those cute fat guys in there, and I'm like, all right, I think Matt Berry could really have some fun with this.
Yes.
Matt Berry wouldn't settle less than for a leading part.
Exactly.
Why do you think I would betray you?
Toast of London. Go watch it on Netflix. Jaimon Housso as the King Mulamban.
Nice.
It just seemed obvious to me. For King Gustav of Finland, I went with Mads Mikkelsen.
Oh, I'm jealous.
It just,
That's awesome.
like, once again, felt obvious. And for Princess Anna, I went with Emily Blunt.
Nice.
Now, for my King Ralph, I got a little list on the side here. And I had Paul Rudd, Seth MacFarlane, Andy Samberg, Kevin Hart, Craig Robinson, Doug Judy. But I finally settled, despite my misgivings, I actually settled with, because I did want to add a little raunchiness to this, I finally settled with Seth Rogen.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. And
he is probably the closest to the John Goodman with the sort of American everyman, even though he's Canadian.
Yeah, and you can still bring in that gruffness, that roughness that you see in Seth Rogen comedies into this, and you can see how that would work and blend fairly well with this material.
Yeah.
You know what? He's a good actor. He has that good, likable, naive quality that you'd want. He could pull off like a movie, less raunchy than you'd think.
Oh, I think he could if you wanted to keep it PG or whatever, or if you wanted to raunch it up a little bit to an R. Like, he can go either direction.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yeah, he can. Yeah, one of my other choices for Ralph was Kevin James. I thought he would make another good choice. But yeah, I wanted somebody who I knew was capable of singing if we were going to keep him as a lounge singer.
Yeah, I wasn't married to that idea, though. Like, as far as even Vegas, I'm like, well, boy, why not New York?
Yeah.
When you were talking Craig Robinson, and I thought of lounge singing because I thought of Doug Judy.
Yeah.
And he also has
can
kind
make
of
him
that lovable teddy bear character.
Yeah.
That I like.
I was going to say, yeah, you could make him like even a cheesy stage magician, right? Instead of a lounge singer, if you wanted to move away from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we don't need him singing a rock song just to draw out time in the movie.
The only thing is that he just is his profession is something that's not entirely savory.
Exactly.
Yeah. If there's a somewhat questionable morality in there, then it'll probably work.
Yeah. Well, I was actually thinking while we were talking there, and I kind of slipped out of my mind while it just popped back in. Is instead of making him like a Vegas lounge singer, make him like the piano player in like a strip club, and then that sort of feeds why he goes to the strip club in England, because that's where he's comfortable, because that's where he's been working for so long.
Well, I mean, he was working with Vegas acts.
Yeah, like the guy from Hogan's Heroes.
Oh.
That actor, Bob Crane, he on the side would play piano in strip clubs just for fun.
Oh.
Yeah, I bet it would be fun if you're Bob Crane and it's like, hey, I just played piano for your set. Want to go home?
Yeah.
I think that's what he's doing.
Actually, the movie Autofocus is very good. Greg Kinnear.
But the mention of the magician thing actually comes back to what we were talking about earlier, too, where he's squirreling stuff away if he was a magician.
Oh, sleight of hand.
That would be, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
or he could have some sort of job that, in our modern day and age, is something that you can't really explain. Like, I'm a reseller on Amazon. Like some sort of something where he gets merchandise and sells it. He has merchandise and sells it. Nobody entirely knows what that means.
Yeah, suddenly the star of Africa appears up on eBay. Okay, that's pretty funny. They're like, okay, you can't do that.
He's just like, he hangs out. He has a good time. For money, he acquires things and sells them. It's like a lot of, I know a lot of people who do that.
Yeah.
Well, you can keep the fencing joke in.
It's pretty unsavory even to me. So yeah, that sounds good. Especially in my profession.
No kidding.
I hate those guys.
Yes.
Cool. Well, I think we had to come up with some good jokes, even some we didn't intentionally make, but we can just feed them right in there. Yes. That was King Ralph. Just a nice, fun, innocent, light comedy after the hard work we did last week trying to dive into 2-3-hour movies.
Yeah.
I figured we needed a nice light hour-and-a-half comedy this week after Girl with Dragon Tattoo.
If I had one additional note, you could also go in the other direction. He's a lounge singer. You could pop a couple more songs in there if you had a good actor who could sing, make a little fun.
You could. I mean, fun note: John Goodman did do his own singing in this movie, so
you could have someone do have 3-4 musical numbers.
You could. If you wanted to, I guess you could. I do cringe, but at the same time, I'm not entirely opposed to King Ralph the musical.
Yeah, you know what you could do? There's a whole thing like when Freddie Mercury duetted with like an opera singer. You can bring that high class to low class whole dynamic duo thing for one of it. That will totally impress the posh people.
Well, apparently, rock and roll does not impress royals.
No. Yeah. But rock and roll with opera, let's see how they fare.
What? You're a royal, but you can't have taste?
Do you want to see the comedy version of the opera song from The Fifth Element?
Yes, that's it. That is it.
What? That wasn't?
I have to say that this was kind of when you talked about, I don't know if I laughed out loud, but I felt kind of warmed by this movie most of the way through.
That's a really good way of putting it.
It is, yeah, because as I said, it might not be a laugh-out-loud movie, but it's an enjoyable one, and you'll feel good after watching it.
Yeah.
Now,
it's a warm, comfy blanket movie.
It is, absolutely. Now, it has a mediocre rating, 5.3 out of 10, over on IMDb. Anybody want to take a stab at the Rotten Tomatoes on this one?
Critics, 18%.
I'd say
I could see critics hating this.
6%?
6? Oh, that's harsh.
No, I said 36.
36, okay. That's still harsh.
So Rotten Tomatoes.
I'd say audience would be 70. Sorry.
Okay, so you're 36 and 70. Sam was 18 for critics.
And I'll go 63 for audience.
Okay.
For audience, I was 61.
So 61, what was your critic?
48.
48, okay. Well, it was 27 and 27. Audiences and critics feel the exact same way about this movie, and I'd like to say you guys are real assholes.
So, that means that roughly 1 in 4 people liked King Ralph, which meant statistically, if all of us liked King Ralph, that this is a statistical anomaly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
We also recognize that it's not a great movie.
Yeah.
We said that at the outset. We recognize his flaws. If I had to give it a rating myself, and I totally know that this is a safe, predictable movie. But, I think the IMDb is a little more realistic at a 5.3. I'd put it at a 5.5, 6 out of 10. Yeah. And it's fine. It's okay to like a 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
Most really good horror movies don't get over 7.
Yeah, there's a certain subset of movies where, you just want something that's good enough, but a little bit better than that.
Yeah, well, and in a time like now, a comfy warm blanket type of movie like this, it's an hour and a half worth watching, and you'll feel good about it afterward.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely won't ask for your time back, I don't think.
No.
That's a good way of putting it, yeah.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, well, I think that was it for King Ralph. We had a lot of fun talking about it, and we actually even had fun watching it. We do recommend the movie to our viewers, and hopefully it brought you some comfort in these trying times. It's nice to get your emails right now and saying how we're helping you get through this, and some of you guys are binging our material, and we're happy that we're still able to provide you content even if we're not all in the same room doing it. It doesn't sound quite as good, but everybody's patient enough to deal with that, and I'm happy to be getting your mail. And if you want to send us a letter, we have a fan challenge coming up in a couple of weeks, and you can get a fan challenge in, or just send us your accolades or your suggestions and your corrections and your comments to any of our social media platforms. At Invasion Remake on Twitter, Invasion the Remake on Facebook and Instagram, and Invasion the Remake at gmail.com. If you want to send us a little bit of a longer letter, that is great. The more I see, the happier I am. Leave us a short rating and review over on Apple Podcasts or whatever your podcast provider happens to be to help get more
earballs
on the show. We're, of course, in a ton of different places, so help people find it. You know where to find it. We're now on Spotify. We're on frickin' YouTube. We're everywhere, so it's really easy to recommend the show and for new listeners to find us. So help them find it. And another way you can do that is to check out our host Libsyn site. That's invasionoftheremake.libsyn.com, and you can find all episodes there, or you can find us on our new Wix site. Sam, what's that address?
It is invasionoftheremake.wixsite.com/podcast.
Nice.
No excuses. We're easy to find and even easier to listen to. So we'll help you get through some of these long, boring hours that you suddenly find you have a lot of time on your hands. You can check out our podcast while you're making dinner or whatever instead of your morning commute because you don't have one. And hopefully the world will get back together soon, but we'll be here each and every week giving you new content. So next week it's going to be a comparison episode. We went from light. I think we're going to go into some darkness next week, so perk up, horror fans. We're bringing you something next week. It's been a while.
Gasp.
I know. We're going to bring some horror next week. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You're going to have to tune in next week. Until then, I've been Jason.
I'm always Sam.
We continue to be Trish.
I always come back as Jeff Omega.
He always sounds undead when he says that.
He always comes back.
He's in the Tower of London dungeons. Where you haven't fed him for a week.
That's
He's hanging by his wrist from the wall.
Yeah.
That's what I say as I'm stepping out of the room.
That's what his t-shirt's going to look like. Like, we're all going to have these Rockstar t-shirts, and it's just going to be Jeff hanging on a wall. The fourth man. I'm the fourth man. All right. Until next week, we are out of here.
Well, I guess that about does it. I know you'll do a hell of a job. You got the breeding, you got the know-how. You've practically been king already. You'll probably have to work on your dancing, though. And feel free, to change the decor.
Just a dab here and there.
Anyway, I want to thank you for everything you did for me. I couldn't have made it without you. And you too, Dunk and Tommy.
It's I who should be thanking you. You showed me how to be a king.
Me? I was a lousy king.
On the contrary. You are a good and decent man. And you've acted honorably. I shall try to follow your example.
Like you said. Hey, don't forget the crown. You'll want to practice wearing it to get used to the weight. So long, Tommy.
Good luck, Your Majesty.
So long, Dunk.
Goodbye, Your Majesty.
So long, Your Majesty.